Hello and welcome to another fabulous day of art. All right, second grade friends, if you haven't already taken a look in Seesaw, log into your Seesaw and take a look at the read aloud that I posted. It's in the art folder, so if you go click on the folder that's in Seesaw and you find the one that says art and you click on it, all right, you will find a video in there of me reading out loud to you Ish, a wonderful book by Peter H. Reynolds. I highly recommend it. All right, so go ahead and watch that video of me reading the book. Of course, as you know, I can't be reading books on here on YouTube because that would violate copyright laws, and we don't want to do that. But I can read them and post them to Seesaw since that is an account that you have to log into. It's a wonderful book where we learned a little bit about how the main character learned, you know, that it's okay for the drawing not to look exactly realistic. It doesn't have to look exactly like real life. It could look, the vase of flowers could look vase-ish, and it would still be beautiful, all right? The important thing is that you keep drawing, and you keep trying, and you keep doing your best artwork, because whatever you make, all right, it's going to be your effort, and it's going to be beautiful, all right? So, today's lesson, all right, we're going to observe a vase of flowers, all right, and we're going to draw from observation. Observation is a big word that means to look at something. So, I'm going to be looking at this vase of flowers and drawing it. Now, I realize that normally in our class, I would put out a vase of flowers on each of your tables, but we can't do that for this first lesson. That's okay. What you can do is at home, maybe if there's flowers outside, you could go with an adult, make sure that you're with your adult to go and look at the flowers, or you know, you could maybe somebody's got some flowers inside, something like that. But if you can find some flowers somewhere for you to look at, that would be a great thing for you to do, so you can draw from observation. If not, no worries, just use what you got on hand. Like I said, just use what you got. But if you can, it would be excellent if you can be looking at some real flowers. Okay, for this lesson. So the first thing we're going to do, you're going to need a pencil and a paper. So go ahead, if you haven't already, go out, find a pencil and a paper, right? Get a pencil and paper ready. For me, I'm going to show you how to draw using my whiteboard. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my box, and that's going to be my paper. So we're going to pretend that this box on the whiteboard is my paper. All right. Now, if you look at my example over here, all right, my vase of flowers that I've drawn, all right, that takes up almost all of the paper. I'm going to show you how to do that. So when you're looking at let me get a different color. When you're looking at your vase, and this vase, if you're wondering why it looks so much like a giant cup, that's because it's a giant cup. But it can be used as a vase, right? Giant cups can be great vases. So I'm looking at the cup here. All right, and I'm going to start by drawing the vase, all right? So wherever my flowers are in, that would be the vase. I'm going to start here. I'm going to draw a line down, and then a line back up, and then coming back around. Now, if you made a mistake, like you can see, I've already made one. That's okay. That's going to happen when you're drawing. Just erase it and fill it back in. There you go. You got this. Okay, so that's my vase. My vase is nice and big, all right? So I started in the middle of that paper. It's nice and big, all right? I went ahead and made that vase. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking at the flowers. Now, my trick, all right, the tip that I'm going to pass on to you is when you're looking at your flowers, you're going to start with, the easiest place to start is actually the middle, the center of that flower. So I'm looking at my flower, okay, and I'm looking for that center part right here in the middle of the flower, okay? So I'm going to start with that. Start by looking over here and say, okay, there's the center of my flower. That's a circle. Awesome, right? I'm going to say, okay, next to that one, there's another circle. There's a flower next to it that's got another center right here. All right, and then maybe there's one up here. All right, so it kind of looks like there's just floating dots, right? Right now it just looks like floating dots. That's okay, all right? After I've done some centers of my flower, then I'm going to look at them and say, okay, next thing, I'm going to look at the petals, okay? So it's time to look at those petals. Now, where the circle for the center of the flowers, that's a circle. These other shapes over here are going to be what we call organic shapes, okay? So these are going to be organic shapes. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at the center of the circle. We're going to go out and back in. Out and back in. Make sure to look between your paper. This is the big part about observation drawing. You got to look between your paper and you got to look at the flowers, okay? So remember to do that. Look at your paper. Look at your flowers while you're drawing, out and back in. And then do the same thing over here, out and back in. It's okay if you draw on top of your other drawing a little bit. That's all right. We can clean that up later, right? But I want you to go ahead and make those petals. Going out and back in, out and back in. Remember what we learned from Ramon, right? It's okay if it looks a little not exactly the same as what you're looking at. That's okay, all right? Remember, drawing ishly is awesome. Okay, so we've done that. Next, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to use a different color so you can see this better. All right, we're going to make some leaves because there's some leaves going on in here, right? So I'm going to say my leaves are kind of the same shape. The ones that I'm looking at are the same shape as my petals right here. So they're just going to be out and back in. They're going to be nice and big. Out and back in. Out and back in. And it's okay if you want to add some stuff from your imagination too. So we're doing a little bit of observation, but for this project, I'm going to let you sprinkle in some of your imagination because remember, drawing ishly can really free you up, all right? You can make some really pretty stuff by thinking ishly. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add these little berries right here. How I would do that is I'm going to go here, I'm going to put a little line out and then put some dots around it. Looking at them, making sure I'm really capturing it. There we go. Make some dots. Maybe make another set of berries over here. That's awesome. I'm going to start noticing places where my lines are cutting over each other. Remember to erase those. It's called overlapping. So the petal might be on top. There we go. Something else is underneath. There we go. All right, gonna add a few more leaves. All right. And voila, a beautiful vase of flowers. Don't forget, if there are places where you can see the stems, like I can see a little bit of that stem, all right, part to my flower, I'm gonna go ahead and draw those. 2 lines down, 2 lines down. All right, maybe you might even see what we call texture in the middle of the flower. So you might see some little, maybe this one that I'm looking at looks a little fuzzy. So I might even add a little bit of fuzzy in the middle of the flower. This one that I'm looking over here looks a little bumpy. So I'm going to add some circles, make some little bumps. All right. But those are just some examples of how you could be making your flowers. All right. And petals come in different types. There are some pointy ones. All right. This is a very pointy one over here. Right. And there are some that look more like blobs. So when you've got the center of your flower, then around it, it's just kind of a squiggle line, right? There are some flowers where they're more like this, where it's more like a little circle going around. There we go. There are so many different ways to draw flowers and to draw a vase of flowers. Remember, thinking ishly here, all right? Think ishly when you're doing your pictures so that you can say, you know what? It doesn't have to look exactly like what I'm looking at. I'm just kind of getting inspired by what I'm looking at. I'm drawing from observation. I'm getting an inspiration from what I'm looking at. Okay, so that's how you would draw your vase of flowers. The next thing to do, our next step, would be coloring it in. Now remember, use whatever you have at home. You might have paints. I use paint for mine, but you might have markers. Use markers. You might have colored pencils or crayons. Go ahead and use those. If you remember, and I'm sure that my second grade friends that I had last year will remember, you can always turn markers into paint. All you need is the marker. You do a little scribble with the marker, and then you get a paintbrush, you get a little water, get the paintbrush wet, put it on the marker, and then that'll turn the marker into paint. Voila. All right, so there are many different ways that you could color in your awesome flower vase. So choose a way, but before you do, all right, so stop. Before you color anything in, I want to remind you about our warm and cool colors, okay? So that's something that we're going to be working on today. After you've done your vase full of flowers drawing, I want you to go ahead and think about what colors you're going to use to paint in your vase of flowers, right? Your vase of flowers doesn't have to be the same colors as the ones you were looking at. That's okay. You can do them different colors, right? So if I was painting this one the exact same way as the ones I'm looking at, I would be using warm colors because this vase of flowers has yellow and orange. It's got a little bit of reds to it, all right? So that would be the warm colors. So the warm colors, I'm going to write them up here for you. The warm colors are red, orange, and yellow. Or you might be using more of the cool colors. The cool colors, I'll write them up here for you. Cool colors are blue, all right, green, or purple, also known as violet. All right, so red, orange, or yellow for warm colors, so you might be using some warm colors, or blue, green, or purple for some cool colors, so you choose. With my picture, I went with a little bit of both. So I did some warm colors here. I added some yellow, some orange, all right, and I added some cool colors too. I put some green and some purple. So you can mix it up too and use both, but what I want you doing is I want you to practice your vocabulary because that's what we're learning, right? We're really learning to identify the warm and the cool colors. So while you're painting, I want you telling whoever you're hanging out with while you're painting, I want you to tell them, hey, I'm going to use a warm color. I'm going to use orange for the vase. Hey, I'm going to use a warm color, a yellow, for the petals. Hey, I'm going to use a cool color, a green, for the leaves. So I want you practicing pointing out where you're seeing the warm and the cool colors that you're using, okay? You got it? Awesome. Now you might be saying, Mrs. O'Neill, why were we doing a vase of flowers? Not only was it because it went along with this awesome book that we read and that it's an awesome thing to do is to practice drawing from observation and to practice drawing ishly as we talked about, but also because it is a big part of another vocabulary word. Are you ready? We're going to learn another thing, all right? It's another part of what's called a still life. Here, I'm going to write it right here. All right. A still life. And a still life is just what it sounds like, all right? It's a picture. You might have seen a beautiful painting of flowers or a beautiful painting of a bowl of oranges, all right? A still life is a picture of objects, right? So an artist has painted or drawn or made a picture of objects. It could be, and photographers sometimes will just take a picture of a beautiful vase of flowers. That would be a still life. It's pictures of an object, right? So that's another one of our vocab words. I want you practicing. Remember to practice pointing out your warm and cool colors, all right, where you've done them. So, you know, where you put the red, orange, and yellow, make sure you point out that those are the warm colors. And where you've put your green, blue, and purple, make sure you point out that those are the cool colors. And make sure you tell people when you're showing it to them, say, hey, I made a still life. Awesome. Okay, so that's one of our big vocab words of this week. So make sure you practice it when you see a painting or a picture of a vase of flowers, a bowl of fruit, an object of some sort. That will be a still life. Okay, awesome. If you want to turn this in, if this is one of the projects that you would like to turn in for a grade to me, make sure that you tell me that and you send it via, you can use Remind to send it to me. Remember to include your first and last name. Tell me what grade level you are, what homeroom teacher you have, and you know, it would be helpful to give me a little description of what you did in your artwork. You can tell me a little bit about your process, or you know, maybe you want to tell me what warm and cool colors you used, yes, or tell me a little bit about how you use your vocab word still life. So do that, or you could use my email address. I have heard a little bit that people are having a little trouble with using my email address, and we found out yesterday that it could be because my email address might be case sensitive. So what that means is the K, the O, and the N are all capital. So if you have not done that, using that, try that out and see if it works. But the K, the O, and the N are capital, and there is that apostrophe between the O and the N, of course, so something to try, but you can turn it in via email or Remind. Either way works. I don't have a preference, just one of those ways would be a great way to snap that picture, turn it in, make sure you include that information. I'm having a hard time with when people write it on the picture, like seeing it. So if you could type up, you know, your first, last name, what homeroom teacher you have, and that kind of thing, that would be super helpful. And I will see you guys next week. I hope you enjoyed. Practice making your still life. Bye!